Hello and welcome back to another episode of our Mega-lo-Mania in Unreal Engine. So, last stream was on Friday, I believe. No, before that even. Mid last week. So it's been quite some time. Or last proper stream anyway. I did stream on Sunday. But didn't really make much progress. Have really kind of been held up with the, I guess the kind of game setup process. There's a lot of components involved, and it's not been clear which component should be in control of doing which part of the process. And then there's always the order of those things, and the fact that in some cases certain things are started in a different order depending on whether it's a dedicated server or not. So I'll just jump right in and give you a little demonstration of where we are. But both screens have started off screen, so just bring them back in. So what we're actually seeing here now is these two borders of the two sectors for this map. The mini map is rendering based on them, and then we've got the player pawns or the castles rendered just off screen. So the castles are rendered just off screen because I've slightly modified where the camera was, so that effectively kind of the 0, 0 point is up in the top right hand corner instead of right in the center. We're still working on positive x-axes, and because of the YZ confusion of 2D, negative z-axes, but it's slightly easier to understand where things will be kind of on screen within the 3D space by having 0, 0 at the top right, top left even. So the reason we can see only the border of our sectors is that I was trying to work on getting the ownership correct, and they should in theory be rendered only by their owner. Now evidently neither is owned by neither player, which is not correct, but I was struggling again with that, setting the owner, but it wasn't really replicating properly, or whether it's got replication issues or just I'm not doing it right, I'm not sure yet. A small part that I did work on was the main menu. There's certainly not any menu really, but we've got the animated mouse pointer, and it moves within the screen space, and the big giant begin button. So that's kind of the setup of the main menu. The mouse pointer was quite good. It was quite a good kind of diversion from what I've been working on recently, and just kind of to actually be able to get something right and working as I wanted it was quite good. The mouse pointer really is straightforward. In on itself, it is a widget, and that widget has a single image, and it doesn't matter where this image is placed within the canvas panel. Canvas panel is obviously set to encompass the whole screen, and the widget itself is set currently to anchor to the top right, with no position and its kind of relative size, as required. And within the event graph for this widget, it simply firstly determines whether it's got a set color. So that means that I can change the color to green, and if I run it again, we can see that the cursor now stays solid green. The purpose being, when you start the game and you've got on the character selection, your mouse cursor is kind of rotating through all the colors, and then when you hover over or choose a character, then the cursor stays that character's color for the duration of the game. So the color basically allows us to set it to a specific or to none. If it's none, then it goes to the animate, and if it's specific, then it just sets it to that color. But in either case, it sets the position. It doesn't actually need to set the color every tick. That's something I could improve on, but nonetheless, every frame or every tick, we get the position of the mouse using this get mouse position scale by DPI, That gives us a nice XY position of where the mouse is effectively within the screen, and we convert that to a 2D vector to set the position of our widget. And we actually set the slot of the image instead of the actual image itself. It took a few kind of attempts to get this correct. Setting the widget's position or variations of didn't work. You actually have to set the slot, but that worked. Set sprite for color and animate sprite, very similar in terms of dealing with the sprite stuff that we've done before. So the kind of end part of that is very similar to this, but we've got this color to frame mapping within the set sprite for color. That just gives us the red, green, blue, yellow to the frame within our array of frames. So we've got this sprites array which defines all of the colors. So the mapping is just a way of kind of being able to convert from the color name that we defined in the previous blueprint, or as kind of in the widget level as a whole. Just quickly map them to their respective frame. So the beginning of this finds that frame and thus the sprite, creates a brush and sets it. Animate, so we take the delta, which is the effect, this delta time passed into the tick. That kind of gives us a semblance of being able to speed up or slow down the animation as required. I do multiply it by some arbitrary number that seemed to work, but I keep that float value. So I do this set of sums and then I keep the float value. I floor the float value to round it off so that I can use it to get an index within the array. And if it's greater than 3, I reset it to 0. But in either case, we get that frame, or get that sprite from the array. We create the brush and we set the brush. So again, there's just the same process there. And that's pretty much all it was, just to get that animated sprite. Works quite nicely. As I say, quite a nice kind of side thing to do, just something that I'll need to do later anyway. The menu also, the kind of primary reason to look at the menu was to try and understand how the game started in various ways, which components were created first and how they were initialized, and what components did actually persist across the level transfer. At the moment, when you press the big start button in the main menu, it simply opens the level and transitions to that one. It's not the seamless transfer, and perhaps the seamless transfer would be a little better, because certain more components are persistent between a level change when it's seamless. But that's a problem and a task for a different day anyway. So if we go back to the main game now, the minimap is actually created by the sectors themselves, the sector actors. So if we open the level blueprint and we open the game state, game mode I think is the one. So the game mode is server only, and it's got a bit of code in it to kind of do the setup. So there's this quite annoying consideration that if the game is being played, if this particular instance is the host of a game, so there's 3 kind of effective states, and I've created a macro which doesn't look like I've used it in here, but I have definitely used it elsewhere. So we just go to my macro library. So this check authority macro that I've created kind of combines the has authority macro that already exists with this is dedicated server check, and effectively takes those 2 conditions and gives us the 3 outputs, basically dedicated server, host and client. And the main reason for that is in various places it's quite useful to be able to do something specific for each of the different situations, but the big consideration was that if this is running as a host, your event post logon for your host player runs before the begin play of the host of this game mode, which means that ideally I would want to do the setup within the event begin play, but I have to also do it if we're not a dedicated server within the on-post login, because the rest of the branch or the rest of the on-post login stuff requires it. So a bit of an awkward one there. Again, that's kind of the issues that I've been trying to work my way through, of this starts before that unless it's this kind of scenarios. Not particularly great. So the setup takes our island from our game instance. The game instance is one of the first things to initialize, and it's the thing that, if I recall correctly, is persistent across games levels. So the theory here is that the host would have specified the level, the island that they are playing on, and that's why it comes from the game instance. So we, in this case, we get all the island structures from the island data table. We get the island structure from the island data table. Primarily just for its display name. It looks like that's the only thing we're using now. And we also get all the characters, and we create an array, and a randomized array of all the characters. And we also get all of the sectors for this map using this condition here, and we create an array of all the sector structures and the start locations of each of those sectors. The rest is just debug or errors. So the purpose of all that is to allow new players to be given a random character, which is done here, and a random start location here when they start. And once they are, although they don't remember which character they are, perhaps they should, but they don't, create data table or get data table row for that character. We then take the character color, the character flag, and the location, the start location, set that all on the player state. So that's taken from the player controller passed in, get the player state, cast the player state, set that data on it. Then we also get all of the actors of the sector type, and what is trying to be done here, though this is the bit that's not working, is that we set the owner, the sector's owner, to the person that is actually start location of it. Now we'll get into the reason why in a moment, but that's the kind of the new players joined or the players joined process. And I think that's all that makes sense. It makes any difference there. So I think the only other thing that's changed in a significant way was rendering the map. Not quite sure if that was done late last week or not. I think there's only a minor change in the fact that I've added this into the event pre-construct. So basically there was a small edge condition where, again, just because of all the how things are started, how things are replicated, there was a chance that the map would be rendered after the first or an amount of actors were replicated over to that client, which meant that their map was incomplete, because for every sector that is spawned, if we go to the sector blueprint, just a quick refresh. So when an actor is spawned, we effectively we're using our check authority here. So we're saying just make sure the sector has a location. There was race conditions which gave it no location, so we want to ignore that. Also, if I add them to the scene manually, they'll have no location for testing purposes, so I just ignore them entirely. So if it's got a location, then we do the check authority and we say only if you're a client should you get the HUD and add the sector. Now, that's obviously leaving this host as a bit of a edge case here, or as a bit of a problem. The host should also get the sectors rendered as a minimap, but it couldn't do it in this way because the host had already created the sectors, but hadn't created the HUD, and just again the order was really getting in the way, and that's what this little bit on the end of the construct was doing. Oh, this is a construction script of the sector. Yeah, I kind of pretty much just call this. Oh, that's render sector. Sorry, confused myself there. This part was to handle the host, basically. So the host obviously would create this and have actors available already, and thus it would use them. I don't do the is location check on this case, which I probably should, but I haven't had that problem yet, or haven't used sectors in line. So, but basically, because the host already has all the actors at this point, or it may have some of the actors, it just renders them onto the minimap straight away, using the add sectors call within the map widget itself. So all of that kind of helped. There's quite a few bits and pieces to make sure that the map was consistently displayed for all players, no matter whether it was a dedicated server, a host and a client, and just a client obviously. So let's see where we are. So this ownership part is where I was working on last, and where I will continue to work from now. The basic concept was that we want to only render the sectors, or one sector per player, and my theory was that the ownership would be the way to deal with that. That's not actually going to be true anymore. That's not actually going to work, but I need the ownership to work anyway, because only the owner of a given sector should actually receive the replication details about anything that sector is doing. So the ownership needs to actually work, but I haven't managed to get it to work. So I was going to put in some additional debug stuff, see if I can figure out where the owner's gone. So in the default map we only have 2 sectors. So I'm just going to print out the owner, or basically has an owner, for this sector. I think it's just get owner. Is valid. So for this actor, get its owner. We'll obviously have true or false. We'll add it into that string, and then we'll print that out. And we're going to print that out a lot. So we probably want some indication of which sector is which. Let's just restructure this a little bit. So we'll use the location as our unique identifier. Let's see what that tells us. So it is saying that 6 has an owner and 10 has an owner. Yeah, so this is running in dedicated server mode. Best open up output log. I'll run that again. So according to the output log, both sectors spawn on the server without an owner. That's fine, that's correct. and then the server states that 6 and 10 has their respective owners. Again, that's correct. At some point they are given ownership. And client 1 says owner is false. Server says it's owner 6. Okay, so client 1 then says ownership 10 has owner true. So at some point client 1 starts knowing that one of the sectors is owned by itself. So nearer to the end of the game, before I closed it, we can see that the ownership is correct. Server says that 6 has an owner and 10 has an owner. That's correct, they do. Client 1 says 6 doesn't, but 10 does. And client 2 says 6 does and 10 doesn't. So they do actually have an owner. So if we go back to our map, not our map, sorry, our sector. So the slab should say it's only owner C, which basically means that only the owner should see it. It should only be visible. So it says, the bit that confuses me, it says that this component will only be visible when the view actor is the component's owner. And I think the issue is the view actor and the owner and that aren't necessarily connected. Because the camera is part of the world, and perhaps the camera isn't owned by the player, and I think that might be the bit that I'm missing. Obvious problem there is I've got one camera and 2 players. Let's start with seeing if that works. So the camera is kind of taken over by the set camera function. Set owner. Put it this way round. New owner is our. I'll just take the player controller directly. Didn't make any difference. So I'm concerned that because we only have one camera, maybe what we can do. So there's another option that we could try is Autoplay Activation. So see if that changes anything. Nope. So again, this is another scenario where there's quite a lot of options, and if I think I need all of the options to kind of align. So we'll take off the only owner C, and we'll just confirm that the sector actually renders correctly. So that's fine. Now we say only owner C, and the way the ownership should be handled within the sprite itself is that it should propagate up to the actor to determine who owns it. don't know what find camera component when viewed. See, even if it was one camera owned by many people, one of them should still own it in the end. Let's find out. Don't really, I guess we can, all we can really do is pass it to our player controller. And then from that we should be able to get the colour. No, get player state. Cast that to our player state. Most inefficient debug line ever. Color. Print string. Red, green, blue. Okay, so within this debug, the client 2 says the owner is 22500 and client 1 says the owner is 2252250, which at least are different colours. Exactly what they are is somewhat irrelevant. So what we could do is take that same code and place that in our sector. Connect that up instead. That should be effectively the same thing. Okay, so what are we seeing here then? We need to know that this is a sector owner. So the sector owner is 22500 and the camera owner is 22500 and that's 02250. So according to this, the sector and the player, the sector owner, the camera owner and the player are correct as expected. Okay, so another thing I was going to try, if that didn't work, was to try and use just some other components. This is very dark. least I can see them now. Let's get that light in the right place. So the orth camera doesn't, let's reset that back, doesn't have a big clip plane. So do have to be fairly big. See what we get when we run that. It's only got 2 balls on a light, shouldn't take very long. So I think when I ran the game they fell down. Okay, that's better. So not great, but at least we can clearly see the 2 things that we're interested in. And we'll now select only owner C to those 2 things. And if we run it again, we shouldn't see it at all. And we'll take those 2 things, jump back into our game level. So we can get a reference to those 2. Okay, just maybe do one at a time. Okay, we won't do any of that. See now if that turns up. No. So again, the set owner stuff does not seem to do well. Unless we're just missing the authority check here. And here. See if that makes any difference. Nope. So they are getting called, they're just not setting the owner. Another thing that we can try is I'll have to just do that again. And spawn actor from class. Actually, in this case, we'll do it as if it wasn't a dedicated server. I'm not sure where that's going to be putting it. Quite sure what's going on with the camera there. It's a bit weird. It's all stretchy. Not the camera, but the much easier if these temporary blocks didn't need lighting. Like it's right there. Difficulty with trying to render these things. I think maybe we'll work with sprites because they're not effective with the lighting so much. So we can see it just there in the distance. Okay, so we can see our little spawn light. Drop another spawn light in. You can see two. Okay. is just a sprite, isn't it? We'll go for the airplane. So our spawn location. -70, 154, so go for about that. So we see two, but we don't see the one we spawn. Make sure nothing is affecting it in any weird way. Should have it here. No, so it doesn't look, maybe we're not getting here. Yep, we are. Maybe we're not setting the sprite correctly then. Never long enough. It says no. It says there's not in scope. Does not get a vendor component. Just all these. So apparently you can't change the sprite. Ugh, there's always something that gets in the way. Our castle. Over the top of our lights, but our castle on the left. We'll just move the lights to the side. Hopefully that will be enough. Almost. A bit further. Oops. That wasn't quite the number that I wanted to change. Okay, so we have our three things. The purpose of this is try and give them ownership. Just trying to keep simple components. Now, based on what I can tell, when we spawn, yeah, I suppose what we can do is only spawn that on the client, not the host, and set its owner. So it should only appear on the right, that's correct. And now, if we do set only over C, it goes away. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense because we can't set the owner of our paper sprite component. Sprite actor. make sure it shows up at all first before I hide it for players. Does not seem to work at all. No matter what variation I give it, it's never visible to the owner. Okay. So another thing that I was going to try today, just so I don't get caught up on that particular issue, was trying to determine whether we can have the buildings inside, as instead of having the sector and the castle as a separate actor and the mine as a separate actor and so on, where really they're all kind of combined together, to try and create a single blueprint, a single actor that encompasses all of those things. So let's call it a slab. Not the nicest word, but it's what it calls it. Building of the old castle. So I'll actually use the castle from the furry age, as I used to call it. To name the buildings better, but and this is the factory, and the mine. So first we need to set that ball to nothing. So we have the lab, factory, the mine, and the castle. So typically, the sector would have trees. It would have its border, but we're not going to deal with the border of the slab. We're just putting the buildings in. It also has some trees. We could put at least, we'll put one tree down. So the trees are actually in the features texture, which we've kind of bundled into the here. So let's quickly grab the trees. So I think the different trees are used on the different biomes. Obviously certain trees are reused, but I call this the scene cherry tree. Could be an apple tree, but it's going to be a cherry tree for me. Scene let's not be smart and just name them generic name. So we can tidy up the sprites a bit later. I'll make that green. It's kind of a bit yellow because we've selected it. There we go. Great. So obviously it is possible to have everything in one scene. We also need the flags. Oops. Right key to copy it. Can't find the right key to copy it. I can't remember the flag is on the mine of that type. Unless they don't have flags.
Oi oi, here comes the Coficionado. Kenko, Coficionado since 1923.
Ah yes, the other buildings don't have a flag, that makes sense, and that actually makes things easier anyway. Okay, so that's kind of quaint. we can have a scene effectively as our island. Now, what I was going to do with the castle and the slab as it is, or the sector, was that a player would own a sector if they had a castle on it, and a player would possess the castle. Now, another thought that I was trying to follow through was that a player would also own the sector they're looking at, but I don't think that's going to work. So I want to create a new level and a new folder. We'll move the test ground into there. We'll move the new level into there. And this one, our new world that we've just created, we'll call this the sector test. So our sector test is going to use our new sector v2 that we've just created. So I'll move that into the tests directory as also for now. And I'll drop 2 of them onto the scene. It's funny. It's taken the last number and just incremented it by 1. Perspective. So we can see that we have 2 identical scenes. If we play that, you can actually see that this flag is waving still, as is that one. So what we'll actually do with yeah, we're just going to try and keep it really simple. So we're going to rename this sector to green, and we're going to duplicate it, and this one's going to be red. Oops, wrong button. So we're going to keep them on the 0, 0 mark. So that they're aligned. It's really odd because they're so flat, yet they're actually not flat from this perspective because of the way the shadows and the sectors are lumpy. Get this positioned right. There we go. So we'll change that to be green. Oops. And just close everything for the time being. So our red one, we'll just change the flag to be red. So pretty straightforward. We have two identical maps, apart from their flag now. Could always be adventurous and just move the tree to a different corner, just so they're even more different. Now we know that this default level is giving us a default camera. If we play, we can see that by default we're getting spectator pawn, we're getting 2 cameras, probably by both different players. So we'll lock the 2 cameras in place. Stop and play. Maybe I locked the 2 cameras in the wrong place. So camera. So rather than it pre-generating 2 cameras, we're going to drop 2 cameras into the game. Space. Let's get myself all mixed up with these controls. I want to rotate it. It's not the right way. Make it stationary. So again, we'll just position these. We need to position it over the middle of this one. It's not 100% correct. They're also quite a lot lower than they need to be. It's 100. Okay. Yep, that one's good. So make this one the same. Distance. Just close enough so that we can see just one of the sectors in each of the cameras. And we'll say that this camera belongs to player 0, so we'll call that camera green, and this camera is red and is auto activated by player 1. So hopefully, yep, that's about right. Not very centered. Let's see if that's better. More on this one. Yeah, that'll do. So 2 cameras pointing at the 2 different sectors. Inevitably, the end result of whatever I put together for the actual game should show this. 2 sectors visible by 2 players. That doesn't stop the 2 players both looking at the same thing. So the theory that I've got at the moment is that I potentially could have all the sectors visible, but to space them out enough so that the camera can be positioned above them when they are activated. In one way or another. So what I'm going to actually try though is this ownership stuff now, just to see if I can get it to work even in the slightest. So we know the default scene root doesn't have this owner C thing. The only one that does is anything below that. So we're going to do it with a castle. Just as a simple test. Owner C, and we are going to make sure that our actor is replicates and is always relevant. Let's see where we are with that. Okay, so castle not visible by either player. So in the event begin play, just quick test here. Again, 2 seconds is just too fast for it to show up on the screen. It's alright when you've got single player and you don't have anything to start, but as soon as you add multiplayer in there, it's too slow. So server says yes, client says no. That's what we need. So what we'll do here is say just quickly move it over there to grab a reference to our sector green, our sector red. Our sector green will have the owner of our player controller. Oops. Yeah, see, that doesn't make any difference at all. From the tick, just in case. No, I did say sector red actually. I want sector green. Don't think that's going to make any difference, no. So this ownership stuff really is a pain. So let's take our cameras. Got some references in there. So I'll say that instead of the player controller, it's the camera green is owner to the sector green. Ah, now it appears. Can we just do that in the begin play? Sector red, sector camera red. Okay, so even the client can say it's got ownership. Just want it so we can see both castles. Yep, so we can confirm that the green player can see the green castle, but the red player can only see the red castle. But it does look, because the red player is actually setting its own ownership, there's no reason why the green camera can't own the green. Sorry, the red camera can't own the green sector as well. And now the client, player 2, can see both. So we don't really gain anything, I think, from messing with the owner in that regard. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to try with this is the replication part, particularly the properties replication. So we've got our sector here. We're just going to give it a variable. I'm going to call it population just so it's kind of relevant. I'm going to say that this is replicated to the owner, and on the event tick we're going to print out what that is. So this is the green sector, so we're going to make it green. We'll keep the duration small because it's going to be spamming it to the screen anyway, but we don't write it to the log. And the default value should be 0. So our client and server just spamming out green 0. We'll take most of that and put it in our red event tick. Oops. Still not spelled that right. We make it red. Command and run. Yep. So we'll also do, just to stop that double printout, we'll check for authority. So the red, because the red's always owned by player 2, it shouldn't have authority. So that should be printed out only on client 1. The green, we want to actually only print that if it's got authority. So the obvious point here is that both sectors exist on both clients, both windows, both players. And whatever you do in the event tick is run by both of them. And if you don't switch, then they'll both do it. Now we only get the server saying green and the client saying red. But obviously they're both red, both 0. Now we've got our sector green and our sector red. So we want to, from our sector green, we want to set population and set population. So as we can see here, the just make this obvious who's who. Well, make it obvious by making a copy. So we don't have to disturb the ownership part. So the green is replicated, hence marked with that. And we can see it here, says owner only. I'm not sure why it says replication none. If we jump over here, it does say that it's replicated, but we can check here and it says none and none. So if we connect that up, obviously at this point nothing will change, we're just setting it to the same thing. So we want to our population is an integer and our delta is going to be a float. For simplicity of making that number change, I'm just going to set it as a float instead in both cases. So obviously the end result here isn't too important above it actually being functional. So now we can just add, oops, float and float. Oh, actually we could have just incremented float. That probably would have worked. And there. And the same value over there. So they're both going to have the same value. But we can see that okay, that's not working, is it? We're going to add float to float. Not the neatest. It should be functional. So now they should both increment slowly but surely. So the client says that its red sector is going up, and the server says its green one's going up, which shouldn't have been the case, to be honest, because the red population is not replicated. And yet the green population is. I think what we want to do is print them both in both cases. So the red sector always prints in red on both server and client, and the green in green. Let's see what we get with that. Really difficult to see what's what. Pause. Perhaps I paused it on one but not the other. Perhaps I haven't paused on either. How can we make this clearer? I think the only way to really do it is a user interface. So we'll have a horizontal box. And that will go across the top. And in that we'll have two text boxes. Not that one. That works. So this will be green population. And red population. Obviously we're going to have that one green and that one red, just in case it's not clear enough. And we're going to take off that and that. So within a level, we're going to keep the incrementing of the population, because effectively we're going to use that. Within a level, we can tag our actors. Where do we tag them? Do we tag them here? Nope. Class defaults, class settings. Oh no, we don't need to do anything. Hi Lord, probably. Let's see what we have. Is that any better? I think I've turned it up. No, that didn't seem to stick. see if this works any better. Okay, so I've increased its volume as much as Windows seems to be able to do. Hopefully that's better. If not, let me know. Oh, great. Sometimes when I'm talking through stuff and I'm trying to think about what I'm doing at the same time as talk about it, I can mumble a little bit, but hopefully with the additional volume then it will be less of a problem. Okay, so I thought I had to tag them, but I don't have to tag them because they're both different anyway. I don't know what I've done there. It's really annoying. I have not made that better. Giving it a stupid header now. Ah, okay. Oh, didn't want to do that. tab. There we go, that's what I did. Somehow I managed to click on that tiny little yellow triangle. Okay, so because I don't need to tag them, I can go straight into the graph of the blueprint. Oh, I need to set these as variables first. And we do want to align that right and that left just so it's clean. So in the event tick we want to get actor by class, actors of class even, and the first one will be red and the second one will be green. Again, just so that we don't make a really long graph. And we know there's only going to be one in there, so we'll just get the one. And we want to set the text. Kind of done the wrong way around. Do it that way around instead. Get. So we'll set the text to each of our widget text boxes, and it will be our get population. And basically the same thing here. What did go wrong? Oh, did I do that wrong? Yeah, I'd switched the actors around, which obviously meant that the get was wrong, and now the population is wrong. So it just rearrange it all. That one climbed up to that, and that one to that. There we go. Got it all right. So from that we need to set the HUD. So what we can do here is, because it's only a kind of test environment, we do need a mode, game mode. So we'll call this the sector test mode, and then our level, we can select the game mode to be sector test mode, and then from that we have a HUD. I think we had a HUD anyway, we may not have needed to do that, but it doesn't matter. We do need the mode. What is the event for player joining? Post login, I think it is. Gives us a player control of the ones we've logged in, so HUD. Don't know actually if the HUD is valid yet. So it says yes, so it says no. So it's valid in one case and not the other. That's kind of what I've had before. Okay, so we'll go back to the original plan. Create a blueprint, HUD, inherit from the HUD, so we'll call this test sector HUD. And in here we can create the widget that we created earlier, because the HUD itself is not actually a widget. It's because you could be using something else for your HUD. You could use elements, 3D elements, things like that. So the HUD itself is not a widget, but we can easily add a widget to it. When the HUD is created, we can create the widget. Owning play would be the same, would be this controller for whomever owns a HUD. And we just add it to the viewport. And the one we want is the don't remember what I called it. I haven't called it anything. So it's just new for now. I'll go back here and say test sector it's not a really long and boring name. Okay, see what we got now. Ah, yes, forgot the key step was to use the new HUD. Okay, so that cleans up all the spam that we were getting and shows us the numbers of population for each of the two players. Population is held in the sector, and apparently the population isn't replicated in both cases, even though it looks like it is. So the sector green's population should be replicated at owner only, and the sector red population is not replicated at all. The obvious, it just occurred to me what the problem is, and that's, again, I've made it so that all of this code, the bit that's actually modifying the population, is done everywhere. The bit that we must do is check that the server does it. Now we get the behavior that I would expect. So again, the green population is replicated to the owner. The red is not replicated at all. If we now make that replicated to the owner, we should see that red population change on the right, which we don't. Why don't we? Ownership. Ownership currently is set for the sectors to the canvas. So camera red. So set owner to the sector red, not to the red camera, but to the player controller of the red camera. I think that's not working because the player controller for the red player doesn't exist at the time this code is done. So we have to jump back over to our mode. Can we get a reference to those sectors within our mode? No, didn't think so. Okay, on post login. So only the authorized can get the game mode. Bind event to on. Nope, can't bind to that event by default. That's okay, we can make that work. So maybe we can make it work if we just make sure the red doesn't exist. Bind event. No, so definitely can't bind to that, but we can override it. So some of these are kind of functions and some of them are events, even though they kind of show up as events. It looks like we're overriding a function. New player joined. So that has signature of post login, maybe. Restart player. No, but restart player should have the new player controllers, which is fine. That's what we wanted. And we call that there. And in the level, we can now bind to our new event. Bind to context sensitive event. Where are you? New player join, that's what I'm looking for. Do it this way instead. Oh, did I put it in the wrong place? No. That worked. Of course. Cast to game mode. Not game mode, sorry. Cast to sector test mode. Now we can bind to it. always forget that step as well. So once we've bound to that, and we don't need to worry about authority really, because as I say, only the server, the host, dedicated server, whatever, would have access to the game mode, but we'll do the test anyway, save the error. So now we've got the joined, create event. Let's do custom event. Yeah, custom event makes it a little bit easier in this case. Now we definitely know we're only gonna be calling this from our authority. So we should be able to how are we going to do this? I think we're just going to set the owner to both of them. Let's see what happens there. Oh, nothing if I don't tie it up. So, green sector, camera, red sector, camera over there. Get rid of those two. Okay, so now the red is actually being replicated over and the green is not. I would have thought the green should be, but I may not have set the replication correctly. So that's replicated to owner and red is replicated to owner. Oh, stupid. It has to connect like that. Okay, so now we should get them both over there. Nope. Why does the green not change the owner? It does appear though that the replication works when the owner is set to the player controller, which kind of makes sense. Setting it to the camera will mean that none of it replicates. So the castle is visible. We can see that the castle now shows up because the owner of our actor is the camera. But the data isn't replicated, be it the green or the red, it doesn't really matter. It just seems like there's a bit of a, well, it's definitely a bit of an annoyance. Once you set it up an example like this, where you've kind of got very confined test scenario, it's easy to see where the inconsistency is, but trying to put this together during kind of creation of an actual level would have probably caught me out quite a bit. Well, the owner stuff already has. It took quite some time to actually get the ownership working correctly. So I think based on this test, I know that I can't use owner for visibility. Kind of literal actor, visible, non-visible on owner. That's just not going to work because I need to be able to set the owner to the camera and to the thing as a whole to replicate. Whether the sector has the data, shares the data with the castle or not, I can't have the sector owned both by the player's camera and the player themselves. So that kind of solves that problem. Well, doesn't solve the problem, just eliminates the problem because I just can't do it that way. Obviously, to replicate the data, the player has to own it. What I don't quite get is why the new player can't own both of them. So I think within the mode, let's bring this back over here, should be able to get player count, get number of players. So just print that out. Just make sure it makes sense. So we should see 1 and 2, yep. So that tells me 1 is always going to be the server and 2 is always going to be the client. And the reason for that is now I can add another variable. I'll have it as an integer. And it's going to be player index. I'm going to use that player index. Oh, sorry. Can't pass in a reference to an event. Can't pass a reference, sorry, to an event. So now we can use that switch on int. Come in here. We don't need the default one. Get rid of the cameras. So we're going to say that if it's 0, we'll do that, and if it's 1, we'll do that. Sector red goes to 1. It's fairly certain they're the right way around. Yep. Don't have any replication now. New owner is the new player in both cases. Sector green, sector red. Let's go straight to the owner. Okay, now we have the replication. Again, only the red when I would expect both. We'll need it in a minute. Oh, no, we won't keep that because it's gone now. Okay, so let's have a look. This event should be fired twice. Our first case, our index is 0. Don't have a player controller. Resume. Ah. Event was not fired twice. Ah, yes. Okay, I remember. Another complication that I had with dedicated versus non-dedicated. If we set that to dedicated, I'll switch back. Zero and 1. So we start that. Again, that's not really the end result that I was expecting. So we call it once, think we call it twice. So what we'll do is in the post log on print play join. So now we get 2-player joined, but only the red is replicating again. There we go. So that's what I missed. As I say, again, it's just all of that point, all those different things. Because these are 2 different actors, I do have to do the same thing twice on both. It's obviously not the best way to do it, but spawning the same actor and then changing its flag based on the owner is just a bit more difficult, and beyond what I really wanted to do within this test scenario. So the issue was that my red sector replicates and my green sector does not. So now if it does, we should have the right result. We'll remove that breakpoint. Run it again. So we still only have one of the numbers replicating. Did that work? Replicates. I think we have to say they're always relevant. I think that would be true within our game concept as well, because even if they're not fully kind of all the buildings and everything put into one actor, we want some data, the tech age of the sector, for example, to be replicated to all clients always. And if these settings, as we saw, do override or effectively come first in comparison to the settings within the components. So now we should get, nope, we still have not got always relevant, load on client and replicate. Here we have relevant, client, replicate. Population should replicate to owner, population should replicate to owner. Okay, number of players is slightly one higher than I expected. That's fine. So take that, decrement, pass it in. That's better at last. We have the replication we expected. Again, a combination of issues across multiple blueprints to actually get us to the result we wanted. So we can now change, for example, our sector green to replicate everywhere. And we can see that the number replicates on both screens now, even though we don't really want the red player to know about the green player's population. We could also solve that particular thing by saying it's only relevant to the owner. So we try that. And in this case, it actually looks like that's what we want. But the important part is that no properties will be replicated to the other client in this circumstance, even though we technically do want some properties later on. So we do want to keep the always relevant process on. So I think this little experiment was to have a quick look at what a sector looked like if it had everything in it. Obviously not all sectors are going to have all 4 buildings, but what I could do is simply state, dynamically add them, and obviously specify quite where they go depending on the sector information. So let's see if that will work. Move the slab on the green over a bit. We also want to get rid of the only owner C check, because we're fairly certain that's not going to work. Yep. And we'll push our red camera back over so we can just see his own. Probably need them a little bit further apart so that the sector can sit correctly. Oops. Sector should really sit kind of on the right hand side, so there's plenty of space for the UI to be on the left hand side. Again, it's not positioned correctly anyway, but that would mean that the sector would have to be further apart. I did it again. There we go. And oops, correct the green's replication. Always relevant replicates, and always relevant replicates. Odd thing was that the green population is being replicated over, even though it's actually specified to, oh, it's replicated on, sorry, yes, owner only. Let's put that back in the state that we want it. So now within our construction script, we want to add component. Paper sprite component. So this is a bit that didn't work in the previous case, but maybe it's going to be different now. Different context. Can't really see the buildings properly, so I'm just going to pick one. And we want to put that. Oh, we want to put that in our sector green viewport. Not that one. I'm going to put it back there, so 7245. What? X and Z. 72, 45. Both positive. See what happens. Okay, that worked. Our lab has appeared. It's a different lab, but that helps to prove that it worked. The lab's been added dynamically. It's been added with the appropriate sprite. So let's see if we can do it this way. So in the begin play, we want to delay for 20 seconds. Then we want to add our sprite. Oh, probably had to get rid of it here. So the purpose of that is just to prove that we can add it in the construction script. That's good if we know that it should exist, but it often isn't going to unless there's an owner. But secondly, this should prove that we can add it dynamically. It's not looking good. Oh, there we go. Took a bit longer. So we can add it dynamically at some point later, which is good because the sector can do buildings and the buildings need to be placed once they're built. But the castle would probably be something that would be pre-created depending on the sector and the ownership. So particularly at the beginning of the game, the sectors that have owners, the sectors that would have owners would spawn a castle. So we could do that. We'll just quickly jump into our I think I've put them under buildings. Yep, sprites. So we'll just go for the furry ones. So let's take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So building, castle, 6. Building, mine, 6. So the 6 is obviously just mind, the tech level in this case. Oh. And we'll just do those just so that we've got something in the way we want it. Okay, so construction script, we want to building castle 6. So we'll actually make the current building invisible. So we can check that. Yep, castle's not there. Flag still is, even though it's a child of, but I know that I can make the child's invisible when I change its visibility state of parents within the graphs itself. So even though I have to do it manually in this case, that's okay. So we'll take the location, which is -53 and -30, and we'll say get owner. Maybe we don't have an owner in here. There we go. Is valid. So if you have an owner, we want to spawn our new castle at the appropriate location. So we shouldn't actually have one in this case because we don't have an owner until after it's constructed. What we can do though, I think really there's obviously going to be a case where we'd need to spawn it with a castle potentially. I guess we could. So when we spawn an actor, don't know if we still have it. Nope. Spawn actor from class. it is possible to specify the owner immediately. So again, if we jump into here, we'll say hidden in game, sector green is minus 150. So oops. Sector green, vector 3D. That location again, minus 150. That's all it is. Let's get rid of that. So we spawn our new actor green with no owner, and it looks like that pretty much. Now we'll just verify that that is the right one. Well, I guess we could verify that by not doing it. Yep, so we don't have it, and then we do have it, but we don't have a castle. Now I think if we get our player controller, not player character, that's not what we want. Get player controller. We tie that up. Now that's not actually going to work because we're running in dedicated server mode, I thought. Oh, sorry, it gets player controller for player 0. Whether it's dedicated server mode or not, it doesn't matter. That's fine. So it does spawn it. But it does say that we don't have a owner still. Maybe we need to do that in the begin play instead. No. Bit surprised actually, I thought that we would have had an owner, but we don't. Even though we've spawned that actor with an owner. How strange. Let's take those three. Drop them in here. It's constantly saying it doesn't have an owner. I mean, that makes sense that it doesn't have an owner, except for the fact that we say that we have an owner. Okay, so we're using the reference to the green here. Get all actors of class. What we'll do instead of using the green directly, again, chances are we're going to want to do this for the red as well later. green. Oh, looks like we've gone offline. Yep, looks like the connection's gone. I think it did this last time at about this time, about the 2-hour mark, but it should be back shortly. And I think we're back now. Don't know what happened then. It looks like I got disconnected. Don't know if that was because I've streamed for more than 2 hours in a row and it doesn't like that, or what. Nonetheless, it's back. So I hadn't done anything. Just trying to get the green actors. So I actually know that we've got 2 now, which is why I'm getting the first. We've got the static one we added, the one we referenced originally by the persistent level, and we've got the new one we've created. I'm actually now going to update the value for the new one. If we jump over to our widget that we created earlier, we can also change that. What error do we have? Not a sector green C. It kind of is. We can get the population from it. Perhaps there is some difference between this set and this set. See if it prefers that. Tie that straight up there and then that one there. Did a bit early. Okay, so our sector green is not doing correctly. Maybe it's because this one's not. Again, we'll just redo that one. Get population. That. Okay, so our green is not replicated to either. That's fine because we don't have an owner. We know we don't have an owner. That's what this big spam of errors say. Sometimes I can't undo stuff. That's okay. So what we wanted to do was, rather than setting the owner kind of using a persistent actor, we can do it with this. Again, a little bit more lines to tie that all together. That covers that one. So now the green should work on the left. Yes, that's okay. So the green is now replicating correctly. But as is evident, because of the way this all ties up, the green doesn't have an owner during its construction. We've kind of proved that. And it also doesn't have an owner on the begin play. So we need to tell it that the owner's changed. I don't believe there is an event for that. Nope, no event in that. We can get the owner. Like our components can have owners, but nonetheless. Yeah, so there's no actual way to say, you know, you've got an owner in any other way. So the only way I can think of is to add a function. We're going to call it claim. Don't really need to worry about the player controller or who the player controller is. First thing we want to do is actually set the owner, and then from that we can build the building. So again, we'll have another function for build building, and that will be building. Again, this could be an enum moving forwards, but for now we'll just use a name. Switch on name. So those would be castle, mine, lab, and a factory. And we could check that we have an owner in the build building. That does seem to make some sense, because we don't really want to do this accidentally if we don't have an owner, and we probably want to do it only if we've got authority. Again, kind of future-proofing those checks. So if we're allowed and we have valid, because really it's not so much as is we're allowed, it's more of a are we the server, because only the server should make these kind of changes. So are we the server? Do we have an owner? If all that is true, then let's build our building. So we know how to build it. It's that. So we could have some local variables. Is this actually we'll do promote to local variable. Excellent. So because inevitably we want to set the location to basically 4 different things depending on where what we're spawning, and we know our castle is -53 and -30, and the sprite, I don't think we can do anything about the sprite. Oh no, we can. This is the sprite. So then we want a sprite and location. Sprite. So there's different ways that I can do this. Obviously I've got this information in the data table of sectors. Likelinesses will drag it out of there instead. That not only tells us, that will tell us the where, and then we'll find the building through some other method, and it will tell us what picture to use, because the picture does depend on the tech level. So we'll actually have to get the tech level before we pick the sprite, and that's all within a data table as well. So this is the mine, the lab, and the factory. I think, yep. And now, in all of those cage occurrences, we can set everything that we want there. So when we claim, we can call build building castle. What we'll do is we'll modify our sector again. We'll just drag our mine off and our factory off. We'll make our castle visible again, but we'll drag him off too. I think I'll actually put him so we will make all of these invisible. Actually, we'll make them hidden in game instead. Hidden game. Okay, so completely empty. We can get rid of the actor has no graph. It does not have, so all of that is not going to work anymore anyway. That's 72 and 45 is where we want the lab, so we'll just make that one right. Oops. But so the bottom line to this is currently we just call set actor, but instead we'll do claim and our player controller, just drop that straight in. What is that? Controller object reference. Minor complication. That is a player controller. That is a controller. So I think I just put the wrong data type in here. We want a player controller instead. That's that one over here. Player controller to there, and a player controller to our claim. So instead of doing set owner, we're doing claim. That should build as a castle. Not quite. Find out why. So we're going into our claim function. Step into. Yep, we've got a player controller. Oh, actually we don't have a player controller. Current value is none. Current value is still none. Maybe we didn't tie it properly over here. No. So we do have a player controller 0 there. Do have player controller here. Still have a player controller. So now we've got player controller 1 don't think I pressed the right button when I went into claim. So 11, so into. Nope, we definitely do. But it doesn't seem to be going into it anymore. Green. Start saving everything. Maybe it's just the fact that I'm doing it by reference again. I do tend to do that by default. Nope. Now we're not getting into claim at all. I don't understand. We don't go into that function. Okay, we're going into it now anyway. And everything's okay. Says castle, says our location, says our sprite, add player sprite, does say that it's internal use only. That's not promising. Minus 53, minus 30. Doesn't appear to appear, which is odd because it appeared when we had it before. Oops. Unless there's replication issues again. Could be replication. So if we go into the building, make sure that the component is replicated. Oh. Don't know what happened there. Seemed to have jumped me to my other level. Whatever that is, it does weird things. Okay, so it doesn't look like spawning an actor component, especially since the comment says don't. Yeah, I'm not sure if what I'm trying to do is wrong. Add. See if there's any alternatives. That's really weird. Yeah, that doesn't seem to work. Yeah, I don't know. There doesn't seem to be anything explicit saying shouldn't, even though it doesn't appear to work. Although annoyingly, it worked in the other context. 20 seconds is a bit long. So it works there. So what I'm unsure about is why it's not working in this case. Let's make that a castle. Nope, no issue there. it's not being called at all. It's that same problem with the claim function seemed to have gone missing. I think maybe there's some timing issue. In how and in the speed of all this. It's just not stepping into that function again. Yeah, so there may be some complications with creating actors, kind of child actors, or adding the blueprint, the paper 2D sprites as sprite components. The suggestion seems to be there might be a speed related issue, that doing it dynamically might cause slowdowns. I suppose on bigger maps, we've got 16 sectors, someone could build buildings on all 16 sectors at similar times, so there may be some issue with speed in that case. So maybe there's a better way to add the buildings, or maybe the buildings should be completely separate, like I was kind of working on before. Child actor. Let's see if this is any different. So yeah, we don't care about the sprite necessarily, but we're setting the child actor there, aren't we? That one. assume that's not going to work. It did work. Claim. So let's just make sure that it's working as expected. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something weird going on, because the green starts value starts replicating to the right once I have spawned the castle, but the claiming then implies that at least to some extent the castle appears. Yeah, so I can't have them as paper sprites. Well, I guess the thing is I just can't spawn them. Well, I can spawn them by dint of child actors, but I'm not sure what that gains me. Although one thing that I was trying to achieve with the previous, by having the buildings as separate actors, I was trying to have the ability to separate the implementation details of each of those actors and the logic within them. Okay, well, I'm gonna stop for this evening. I think I haven't made any direct progress, but I think this little test, sector test, has kind of proved some theories are viable, helped to identify what's going on with owner stuff, and kind of demonstrated the replication a little bit with the population as well. So I'm a little bit more clued in on kind of what things have to do and who's in charge of stuff. So hopefully it'll help. Once I've got a kind of a clear picture of how the sector should work, whether we should utilize a child actor, whether we should just simply have the paper sprites in place and just hide and show them. There's kind of so many options again. I think really what it comes down to though is how to apply the logic within the sector. The sector has to do a lot. The sector has to do a certain amount if it's not owned by anybody, and then it has to do a whole bunch more if it is owned by somebody. And perhaps having the castle as a separate actor allows me to separate that logic out, whereas I can't access any paper sprite component logic. Or I could just have multiple graphs. So there's so many different ways one can address this particular problem. I'll have to give it some thought. But yeah, so thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please follow, subscribe, or whatever else it is, depending on where you're watching this, be it Twitch or YouTube. So I should be back. Oh, may not be back until Thursday, maybe Friday again, unfortunately, due to other things going on, but we'll see. Hopefully sometime within the week. Okay, so thanks very much, and that's all for now.